Now, I've seen a lot of this country. I go out of my way to see bad things because that's what you YouTube people want. And a lot of the rundown cities I've seen are places most people don't want to go into. You can call them ghettos if you want, although that word might be a little strong. Every place I'm going to show you has large parts of town that are poor, dangerous, and run down. Many have been all but abandoned. I think it's important for us to see what's happening in our communities. If we don't know about these tragedies, how do we fix them? And for a lot of us, looking at this with our own lives in the perspective. As we drive through these areas, you'll notice many of the streets are empty. Sometimes, the scariest movies are when you don't see the monster at all. I was on a road trip in Florida one May and spent a lot of my time looking at the beaches and the new sprawl. I spent a couple days in Palm Beach, the richest place in the country, home to Mar-a-Lago and seaside mansions. Well, the server at dinner asked if I had ever been to Pahokee and Belglade before. I was like, no. So I went there, and wow, is it bad. Pahokee and Belglade are small communities in western Palm Beach County, along Lake Okeechobee. They call the whole area the Muck because it was all swampland until it was drained to put in crops. It's a long forgotten about former agriculture hub way out in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of the people who live here are minorities in extreme poverty. A lot of what's left here are remnants of cheap housing thrown up for all the temporary field workers. What's left have become hovels that look like the god-awful slums of third world capitals. I saw lots of rundown apartments, trash, a lot of people standing around looking lost. A lot of this region feels sad and deserted. This area has a history of extreme violence. At one point, half the men who lived here had felonies. There's a history of disease, overcrowding, poor sanitation, malnutrition. This area once had the highest HIV infection rate in the country too. CBS once called this area the harvest of shame. It has some of the worst conditions I've ever seen. Just aren't a lot of jobs here. A lot of what kept this place going was farming, but technology has put a lot of people out of work. A lot of these migrant field workers can only survive on government assistance now. Poverty's so bad they've talked about dissolving these communities entirely and just turn them over to the county. Let them handle it. It would be hard to have hope when you don't have money or an education or a trade. Say what you want about the true definition of a ghetto. There's parts of Chicago that are some of the worst places you can live. I was in Chicago for a day in the summer of 2021. I spent a lot of my time downtown, but I knew if I wanted to capture the essence of Chicago, I needed to get out into the inner cities. The south side of Chicago is known worldwide. It's full of murderers, gangbangers, shootings, poverty, everything that makes a place miserable. They don't measure monthly shootings on the south side. They measure weekend shootings. There were at least 800 murders in Chicago the year I was here. There's a good chance somebody died in this hood I'm driving in this very day. They shoot at the cops, they shoot at each other, they just shoot to shoot. It's lawless in some parts of Chicago. There just aren't enough cops on the streets. There's budget shortfalls, early retirements. People just do whatever they want here, and they know they probably won't pay the price. A lot of Chicago neighborhoods like this are seeing huge population declines. Inglewood might be the most famous South Chicago hood. It had 100,000 people in 1960. Today, there's less than 30,000. Driving around here, you'll hear a siren every 10 minutes. Of course, I'd be risking my life if I were to try to drive through this area during the night. But during the day, it's actually pretty dead. South Chicago being this way isn't surprising. What do you think's going to happen when half a city is undereducated and doesn't understand economics or politics and doesn't even care to? This is a drug and alcohol, mental illness, broken family, politicians don't give a shit, no God, no pride, no care in the world thing. And that makes me sad for our country. A lot of people here grow up with generational poverty and crime. What other life could they know? This is their normal. This is what Keokuk, Iowa used to look like. And this is what it looks like today. I spent a month traveling throughout the Midwest in the summer of 2022. I documented a lot of the smallish communities that dot the landscape in Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota. A lot of the trip was not looking at devastation. That was until I got to Keokuk. Keokuk's a river town on the far eastern side of the state, right along the Mississippi. Now, if you know anything about river towns, you'd understand that these were once vitally important for our country's economy. River towns like Keokuk served as our backbone for shipping and commerce. There were dozens of banks and hotels and lots of very wealthy people here 100 years ago. But that was a long time ago. Industry changes, companies shut down, and people leave. Those who remain have limited options for a middle-class lifestyle. As I drove through Keokuk, I was actually pretty surprised to see just how bad things have gotten here. I've been to Rust Belt towns in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, but I hadn't really heard too much about Iowa's struggles. But it is bad here. Maybe the worst I saw in Iowa. Up and down Main Street are boarded up buildings, businesses that couldn't remain open because they couldn't cut it financially. A lot of the surrounding neighborhoods are filled with homes in disrepair. Broken windows, peeling paint, rotting sideboards. Keokuk's a fading brick, broken sidewalk, what used to be sort of place. Some of this is caused by capitalism greed. You know, moving jobs overseas for bigger profits. And some of this was caused by an entire community unwilling or unable to pick themselves up and evolve. I guess there's an opening here for somebody to come in and snag up a bunch of cheap real estate. I suppose those with the widest eyes and a big imagination might see an opportunity. But a lot of people here today feel forgotten about. And here we are spending billions to help other countries when our own backyard looks like this. Damn. Sure, it's affordable here, but that comes at a price. Residents have a 1 in 100 chance of being the victim of violent crime, and 25% of this community collects welfare. A lot of these people aren't defined by poverty, though. For some people, if they have their basic needs, God, food, that's all they need. So maybe from the outside, it seems worse than it really is. But is this our future? It's not just Keokuk. All up and down the Mississippi are cities that have seen devastation like this. Like Cairo, Illinois. 300 miles south of Keokuk, also along the Mississippi, is the small, obliterated community of Cairo, Illinois. There's about 1,600 people here these days, down from a peak of 15,000 100 years ago. I'd heard a lot about Cairo and how it had been gutted by a loss of jobs. I was on a road trip on my way to Memphis one day in November, and I was finally able to make a detour to see the place. And it is bad. You could call Cairo an industrial relic, a live look at a ghost town in progress. It's the same thing we saw in Keokuk, a loss of blue-collar jobs and extreme poverty. 6 in 10 people here live on welfare. Back in the day, families could get by with a dad working for a factory and mom raising the kids. Not anymore, unless you want to live on the edge of poverty and despair. And crime here is 4 times higher than the rest of the country, too. This place used to be the center of commerce. In the 1920s, there were rich merchants and bankers and thriving businessmen wandering these streets. This is what it used to look like. And after a bunch of floods and riots and all the companies left, crime went up. At one point, 15% of Cairo's population was locked in jail. What? So a lot of people left when it started to go downhill. And a lot of the people who are still here are retired or can't afford to move away. Some of them are addicts who remain addicts because it's so cheap to live here. There hasn't been a private residence built here in 50 years. They tore up the housing projects because there wasn't a budget to keep them open. You can get a house here for as little as $700 these days. Can you believe that? There's a saying, from dirt we came, to the dirt you'll go. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Maybe that's what we're seeing here. But we're in a country where the military says, no man left behind. And here we have an entire community left behind. Can these places be fixed? What would it take? And are they even worth saving? guess it's all about perspective. You can look at a community and your impression is based on your personal situation and experiences. Rich people will be like, God, how do they do it? Poor people are like, yeah, that's my life. People in developing countries are like, hey, that actually looks kind of nice. But few of us know what it's really like to live on a Native American reservation. Now, there are many, many, many devastated Native American reservations in the USA. A long time ago, Americans moved into Native American lands, and there were big conflicts. After the fighting ended, the government set aside large areas in some of the most unsuitable land. Our Native American population has been living in these reservations ever since. There's poverty, and then there's next-level poverty. South Dakota has two of the poorest reservations in the country. One of them's here. It's called Rosebud. It's 1,970 square miles, way out in the middle of nowhere. Since I was already in South Dakota for another project, I just had to stop by and see Rosebud. I picked the biggest city here, which only has 1,400 people. Just about everything I saw in Rosebud was rundown trailers and burned out homes. A lot of the homes here are now abandoned because the people who lived in them were cooking meth. They either burn down or become unlivable, so that puts a lot of people here on the streets. They already have a problem with housing as it is here, so every time a meth user destroys a house, that's one less house on this reservation. So where does everybody go? Into these trailers. On the other side of town are all these old, falling down trailer parks. These used to be a somewhat decent place to live, but now this is all a true ghetto. All the displaced families who have nowhere else to go squish into these little boxes and try to make the best
Liberty
they can.
City, this is
Many
your
don't have
talk
plumbing
radio
or
show,
reliable
Chatterbox,
electricity.
where
Hardly
your
anybody
opinion
has
matters.
internet.
Let's go to the
I hear
phones.
40%
Hello,
of
caller,
the people
you're on
on this
Chatterbox.
reservation are homeless.
Hey, you ever had possum? That's some good eating.
Nah, I really can't say I have.
Well, you ought to try it sometime. I tell you, man, it's good eating. Possum, raccoon, even zebra meat cooks up pretty good.
Do you have anything else to say, or?
Pigeons. Pigeons are good, too. Sometimes they come with notes attached, just like a fortune cookie with wings. Squirrels are not so good. They taste like goldfish. Meat's real stringy. You know what I mean?
Actually, I can't say that I do. But if I did eat too much squirrel and put on a few extra pounds, I'd use the Dormatron. Unlike those other exercise machines that require you to be awake, the Dormatron actually exercises you overnight. Let's learn a little bit more about it.
I've tried everything, and I just couldn't keep those extra 200 pounds off. It started to affect my marriage.
She was too big for me, and I'll sleep with anything.
The Abdometrix, the Thiasize, the tummy stapling. I've had my mouth sewn up, my hands chopped off. You name it, I've tried it.
Yeah, except for exercising and eating right, Porky.
That's right, honey. Then I found the Dormatron. Using a new technology called biorhythmic subconscious gymnastics, the Dormatron exercises you while you sleep. Just strap in your arms and legs, put on the Dormatron headset, then wrap yourself in the special high-voltage electric blanket. Turn it on to 11 and burn those pounds away while you have a relaxing night's sleep. Now that I've lost 280 pounds, my husband's all mine again.
That's right, honey. No more escort services for me. Don't be fat a day longer than you have to. Remember, being fat can even ruin a romantic cruise. Call Dormatron now at 1-800-SLEEP-OFF-LARD or visit www.sleepofflard.com and sleep your way to a thinner, happier you. I'm a marketing manager who lives in the suburbs and commutes to work on the highway. I live alone, so of course I needed a car that could seat 12 and is equipped to drive across Arctic tundra. It just makes me feel better.
The new Maibatsu Monstrosity. Mine is bigger.
Oh, well, that's a good commercial. I love commercials, don't you? This is